Over the weekend, we got some bombshell leaks about Apple's upcoming iMac Pro, including just about the most confusing leak we've had in months, which basically came out of nowhere and shocked everyone in the Apple world. According to DylanDKT, we're gonna be receiving some new products at Apple's spring event, like the new high-end Mac Mini, the new 5G iPhone SE, and the new iPad Air, all of which were expected, and I covered all of that in my last spring event leaks video. And while I strongly believe that we'll be seeing the high-end iMac at the spring event as well, Dylan says that it's on track for a spring release, but he has heard some concerns with regards to production, which isn't a good sign. But the really confusing and downright shocking leak from Dylan was when he said that he received confirmation about an additional 12-core CPU chip configuration for the upcoming iMac Pro. And this is shocking because this is the first time we're hearing anything about this, since the only thing we're currently going off of is the fact that the M1 Max chip has a secret die-to-die interconnect at the bottom of the die, which is something that Apple completely hid from us in their own die images. And what we were expecting was for Apple to take two of those dies and connect them through the new interconnect to create an M1 Max Duo chip that is essentially 2 times more powerful while having double the RAM, double the Thunderbolt controllers, double the encoders, double the everything. And this route makes the most sense for Apple financially because they don't have to spend a bunch of cash redesigning a completely new larger die. They just take 2 existing dies and put them together, saving them a ton of cash. So when I heard this 12-core chip leak, I was honestly flabbergasted, but I've been doing a lot of thinking over the weekend about how this could be possible, and I think I've finally figured it out. But just to give the situation the benefit of the doubt, I'm gonna be presenting 3 different scenarios for how this 12-core chip could make sense. So with that said, let's start off with the first scenario that Apple did in fact create a brand new 12-core die that was intended for Apple's higher-end desktop machines like the iMac Pro. So one might think that since this is a desktop computer, it doesn't really need efficiency cores since it won't be battery powered. So what if Apple would literally just give it 12 performance cores instead of just 8 with the M1 Pro and Max chips? This move by itself would give the iMac Pro roughly 50% more CPU performance, and it would allow it to stay very competitive with Intel's new Alder Lake chips. And now that I think about it, the very first leak we got concerning the first Apple Silicon chip was actually of a 12-core chip, and that was way back in the summer of 2020 before the original M1 was revealed. So when the M1 came and it was only an 8-core chip, it was pretty confusing. So maybe Apple decided to hold off on that special 12-core chip for this new iMac Pro. Well, honestly, that doesn't really make sense to me. And there are actually a few things that don't make sense about this scenario, in my opinion. First of all, if Apple did create a new 12-core chip just for the desktop machines, then why are all of the leaks and rumors pointing to the new Mac Mini coming with the M1 Pro and Max chips, which is something that DylanDKT is very sure about right now? And then going further, Apple developing a 12-core chip just for the iMac Pro alone doesn't make any sense because it would be extremely expensive. And the thing is, Mark Gurman has already confirmed that the upcoming Apple Silicon Mac Pro will have high-performance 20 or 40-core chips created by literally combining 10-core M1 Max dies, either 2 or 4 of them together. But if the new 12-core chip for the iMac Pro was real, wouldn't Apple prefer to just take those new 12-core dies and combine them together instead to create even more powerful 24 or 48-core chips instead of reusing the M1 Max dies that have the extra efficiency cores that don't really matter? So with that said, a new 12-core die just for the iMac Pro doesn't really make a lot of sense. And there's also the question of what they would call it for marketing's sake. So I honestly am having a hard time believing the first scenario, but it's definitely a possibility. Now on to the second scenario. What if this new 12-core chip configuration is actually a 20-core M1 Max Duo chip that is just extremely binned down, with 8 of the cores disabled because of flaws? Well, this is a possibility, but it would require a very weird amount of efficiency cores and performance cores to make sense. Like for example, only 5 P cores within each die and just 1 E core from each die, which sounds very odd. Now Fred the Frenchie on Twitter made a good point about the cost of creating a new 5nm SoC, which would be over $500 million in research and development. So because of that, he believes the 12-core chip is still made from the M1 Max Duo because just making a new one would be too expensive. But I personally think that this would just be way too much chip binning for it to make sense, bringing a 20-core down to a 12. So I don't think that a 12-core is going to be part of the M1 Max Duo at all. And now with that said, it's time for the third scenario. What if this 12-core chip configuration is actually a very early software leak for an iMac Pro coming in the future? Like for example, that time back in July of 2020 when 9to5Mac found references to Face ID within macOS beta code, proving that it is in fact coming to the Mac, but it still hasn't after over a year and a half. So what if this 12-core chip is actually just the future M2 Pro chip that will be going into the 2023 Mac models, including a potential iMac Pro? Because if you really think about it, Apple has to keep upgrading the M1 Pro and Max chips in the future with higher core counts for the M2 Pro, the M3 Pro, the M4 Pro, etc. So the easiest path for Apple to improve performance in future high-end Mac models is to simply give the next-gen chip another 2 performance cores for a total of 12 cores inside of the M2 Pro chip. And if it's true that this 12-core chip is just the future M2 Pro, then everything is still up in the air for the upcoming high-end Apple Silicon iMac. And we should for sure expect the M1 Pro and Max chips, and potentially maybe even the new 20-core M1 Max Duo, although we don't have concrete evidence for it just yet. But then, what if there's a chance that the high-end iMac Pro has been delayed, since DylanDKT did say that there were some concerns with regards to production? So what if this 12-core chip is actually destined for the upcoming iMac Pro, but it ends up getting delayed until maybe WWDC or September, when they would be ready to reveal this new M2 Pro chip? But once again, it wouldn't make sense to reveal the new M2 Pro if they're planning on releasing a new Mac Pro in the fall or winter with an M1 Max-based chip. So all of this is really confusing. But in my personal opinion, if I were to take all of this info and combine it together, I think the most likely scenario is that we do get a new high-end iMac at the spring event, and the new 12-core chip will be destined for the upcoming iMac Pro either later this year or going into next year. And I know that's a disappointing scenario, but it's the most realistic and conservative, having the least amount of expectations from Apple. And don't forget that the 20-core M1 Max Duo is still a possibility for the iMac, which will hopefully be coming this spring. So with that said, if you completely disagree with all my thoughts on this, then go ahead and comment down below. But if you enjoyed the video, tap the like button and click the circle button to subscribe for more videos like this one, and definitely check out one of those two right over there. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.